In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 109 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is the importance of always learning. Our quote of the day comes to us from Isamu Noguchi. I'm always learning, always discovering. I'm thrilled to bring you today's episode. Our guest, Zach Suchin, is quite an impressive individual that defines himself as a perpetual learner. One thing he discusses on today's episode is the importance of finding those right people to work with and always striving to never stop learning. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Zach, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be joining you.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
If I'm awake, I'm ready to bring it.
That's what I said this morning. I woke up above ground, so we're good to go.
Exactly.
So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. I was curious if you had either a personal story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and didn't quit.
Yeah, obviously there are two very distinct forms of challenges I think people face. One is personal, which can very often spill into your professional life, and the other are the professional challenges that really, when you look back on them, are not worth fretting about. I would say that from a professional level, from a professional perspective, there have been countless times where I have felt I've hit an impasse. It's extraordinarily difficult to get over, and you just sort of have to be head down and have the gusto to continue on. And a big part of that for me has been surrounding myself with the right people. I very purposefully didn't start a company on my own. I knew that having a business partner would be good, not only during the difficult times, but also somebody to celebrate with in the peaks. But I would say a moment in time that really shines through for me as an extraordinarily challenging moment was a failure that we had coming out of my business partner and my first venture, where we had decided to raise our funds for our startup in the public markets. And I think that we were ill-advised to raise money in this manner. The appeal of being the first publicly traded social network outweighed the daunting reality of having to adhere to SEC regulatory considerations. So for us, going through that entire process and realizing on the back end of it that it became very difficult to raise a mezzanine round of financing in the public markets in 2009, that kind of thing really weighs on you, and it was the end of a chapter that, of course, led to the beginning of a new chapter. But it takes a lot of perseverance, and for me, a really stable partnership to be able to sustain such a thing.
I'm glad you touched on that, because it's something that we've talked about on quite a few episodes, is getting the right people on your team and the importance of having the right people in your corner. So I guess a question for you would be is how did you find those right people?
Mostly by luck. I would tell you anecdotally. So I had an idea when I was in college, and I'll leave the backstory for another time, but I was trying to figure out a way to execute on an idea I had for a social platform for college students that went beyond the bounds of what Facebook provided, and it was sort of a precursor to what Foursquare became. So we were trying to figure out a way to allow college students to go to a venue and check in and say, "I'm here," by texting those words to 27534 and showing the response to a bartender or a waitress or a waiter or something of that nature in exchange for a deal. So they would get discounts for checking into a venue, but it was all through text protocol. And we didn't have Android platform at the time. There was no iOS. So it was a bit archaic if we look back on it now in our approach. But at the time, it was all we had. And I had no technological background whatsoever. So I had built a conference on the school server that basically told students what social activities were happening around campus and off campus. This was when I was at Emory University between 2002 and 2006. And I put out sort of a classifieds ad on this conference. And believe me, the last thing that people were looking for on this conference was me to put out messaging looking for a business partner. And my current, now as of 12 years, business partner, Jason, responded and said with some sort of cocksure attitude, "Oh yeah, I've owned and operated a web development and design firm since I'm 14." And that was sort of the moment where I knew that this was my guy, because he was the absolute opposite of me. And just like so many people in romantic relationships, I think from a business perspective, you want someone who is complementary to your core set. So this may sound like common advice, but it's a really deep, true reality that the people who are able to balance you are those who are going to think differently from you and help you to sustain, again, during the really challenging times, and also keep you humble in the big wins.
No, I think it's important, and I think you definitely touched on something that's interesting. Is a lot of times some of the most successful businesses do have those yin and yang people where one operates one area really well and strengths and weaknesses complement each other. So I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you're doing today.
Sure. So we started a company called Brand New about 9 years ago this summer. And the purpose was coming out of that situation that I just briefly described, where we had raised money in the public markets. We had a 9-figure capitalization. It was a small business on steroids that the public tried to lift up in ways that organically shouldn't have allowed for. And exiting that situation, we knew that we had learned so much, an MBA in the streets, so to speak, that we wanted to take what we had learned and apply that and help other businesses, both startups and big brands, to navigate the digital space. And so Brand New in its formation was rooted in the theory that all of these platforms, your Facebooks and your Instagrams and your Twitters, are in perpetual shift, new features removed, and new platforms emerging. We really wanted to be the at the epicenter of all of this and be meaningfully helpful to organizations that were trying to figure all this stuff out. So we help startups you've never heard of and some of the biggest brands in the world to help determine their best course of action in the digital space. But we are essentially a creative agency. So everything that we do is rooted in creative. We offer services in design, meaning all of these different branding services and engineering, all of these development services, and of course, social marketing and media buying. And we work with YouTube and E-Entertainment and LL Airlines, AVP, the beach volleyball tour, Mayo Clinic. The list goes on, but really, we consider ourselves perpetual students. So we're just as excited in learning and helping the companies you've never heard of, who have a back of the napkin idea, and then obviously the giants of industry who we feel like we're in a classroom every day learning from these people who have done just incredible things over the years.
That's quite an impressive list of clients. So definitely an interesting market, and obviously you've done really well creating that. So I wanted to switch lanes here and ask you, if you had to define yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Sleepless.
We've done.
And I mean that. And I mean that literally and figuratively. You know, I get very little sleep because when you're in this business, there is never a finish line. Every single client who entrusts us with being a partner for them on their journey towards trying to find a meaningful audience, there's always more to do. And so my mind is constantly churning, and we're talking about 40 different clients who I'm paying attention to and trying to figure out, either from something I read during the day, how is that applicable to forming a partnership for them, or a random idea that might be a really interesting social brand ambassadorship program. So literally, I get very little sleep, but figuratively, it's a restless job. I am constantly yearning for more information. From our perspective, ambition has no finish line, so we are constantly trying to build off of one another internally. We're a team of just about 35. And honestly, I learn from every single person here, including the interns, on a daily basis. It's an extraordinary opportunity for me, and I feel lucky to walk in here every day. But sleepless would be the word that I would use.
So we've done over 112 recordings so far, and that's the first time sleepless has been used. So I kudos to that. Now I need to ask you, when you say sleepless, are you talking 1 to 2 hours a night, or 3 to 4, or none?
I would say I'm usually getting about 5 hours of sleep, and there are nights where I pull an all-nighter, and I feel like a version of myself I only knew in my early 20s, which is not healthy for me or anybody in my personal life. And then there are days where I crash, but on average, it's about balance. The one thing I would say about us being thrown into a culture where everything is on demand and people expect immediate responses is that there are also so many more platforms and services available to you that can help you to reel that in. And so, for example, Headspace is just a fantastic way for me to set aside 30 minutes in the middle of my day, no matter what else is going on, to sit and practice some form of mindfulness. And on their own, a group of staffers here on Monday mornings decided that they were going to set up a room in the office, invite everybody who wanted to participate, and just set mindfulness for the week and set intentions. And as cheesy as that may sound, I think that these kinds of things are really effective. So while I'm at a 5-hour clip on a general 24-hour period, I find that these moments to take stock are extremely important.
I couldn't agree more, and I actually just started using the Headspace app myself about a week ago, and I'm a novice with it, but I'm definitely seeing some of the benefits already. So I think it's cool that you had some people at your company that took the charge with that and created that room and that mindfulness. And I think that's really important for companies, and I think that's really neat because it says a lot about not only your company but the employees, that they have the ability and the wherewithal to know that they can do that, and obviously you have supported them, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, leadership serves as a great flint, but great ideas and great energy come from anywhere. So if we hire people mindful of trying to find individuals that we believe are presenting themselves as sponges. If somebody is not open to constantly learning and aware that these learnings can come from literally anywhere, it's just, this is not the right environment for them. And if I don't genuinely believe that for myself and I don't practice that, then it's very difficult for me to preach that. It's a group of very eager to learn, tirelessly on the what's the word I'm looking for? Just constantly searching for more information. Really, just a group of people who read an extraordinary amount. It's a wonderful group.
So speaking of reading, I was curious, is there anything that you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners? How about I recommend a list of books that I haven't read that are sitting on my desk. With the 5 hours I'm getting of sleep, I wish I could. I needed no sleep, but I could just read this. I'm dying to read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. I'm a big Ray Kurzweil fan. I've read a lot of his stuff, but next on my list from him is Fantastic Voyage. Still on my list is the Hillbilly Elegy, just to try to understand the times we're living in.
The stack of books on my desk is actually taller than I am as I stand. It's really difficult. I spend a good amount of my day reading articles, and I would say that I'm either skimming over or thoroughly reading 1,000 articles a day. And people who know me intimately recognize that this is part of my problem, is that I am insatiably curious, and so the amount of information that I feel like I need to be exposed to in order to do my job properly, I like to know a little about a lot. I don't need to be a 50 mile deep down expert on a whole lot of things, but I like to know a little about a lot of things. And so my RSS feed is just stacked with a variety of different things, ranging from architecture blogs and inspiration in terms of design, obviously, to things that are happening politically. Of course, I have to know everything that's going on in the tech space, what's hot in terms of investments, specific even to Los Angeles, with the emergence of the bird scooters down here. All these different types of things are just orbiting my day, and it's I think the most important part of my day is ensuring that I'm aware of everything that's happening across these different industries, so that when I walk into a meeting with somebody who wants our services, I can talk intelligently about their space. But again, if I'm not getting the information from these feeds beyond the scope of that, we're learning a significant amount every day from the people who are coming in and talking about their specific industries.
No, that was a loaded question. So I think what you should do is maybe get about an hour to an hour and a half of sleep and just read the rest of the time.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'll run that by some people, see if that's a collective piece of advice.
Yeah, that'll work for about a couple hours, and then so don't hold me to that. So I wanted to ask, assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what's the one piece of advice you'd like to give the 20-year-old version of yourself?
Expect the unexpected. It's not only what they say on Big Brother, the CBS show, which is not where I got it, but it's the reality of running a business where every dollar at stake is on the backs of the hard work that the people who work for you have done. We've never raised money, so I don't have the benefit of tapping into investor funds to buy a new desk for a new staffer. Expecting the unexpected means that there's going to be a problem every day, and that's okay. And great leadership, which is what I strive to. I have very far to go, and I'm constantly learning. But the reality that when you wake up in the morning, you set the expectation that things aren't going to go as you expect, cushions the reality when it comes roaring through at 11 a.m. or 4 p.m. or whenever these things start to manifest and deviate from what you expect. So that for me is the thing that I would try to really convince 20 or 22-year-old Zach to understand. Things aren't always going to go your way, and that's okay, because failure and challenges are the greatest professors that you'll possibly have. And you don't learn from the great wins. You learn from all of the challenging mile markers along the way. And when you're a growing business and you've got you go from 5 people to 10 people to 14 people to 20 people to 35 people, and we're growing rapidly, you have a very strong responsibility to be a shining example of how to sustain these blows. If I run around the office with my head on fire, that's going to reverberate in a really negative way for the rest of the office. So the greatest piece of advice I could give myself many years ago would be to expect that things won't go your way, and to shift your perception. Because one of the greatest quotes I heard recently, and I think it's attributed to Oprah, but I'm not positive, was that challenging things don't happen to you. Challenging things happen for you. And if you shift the perception that these things are happening so that you can learn how to deal with it and the things to come, you don't internalize the stress. You use it as fuel to throttle your success.
That's a great quote, and that was one of my questions. If you do have a favorite quote, so I appreciate you sharing that. So I wanted to shift lanes for a second and ask you, if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, that taps into a bit of emotion. I'll give you two different answers. One's visceral, one's top of mind. One of the driving forces for me in business is my mom. My mom passed away a couple years ago, and was somebody I was extraordinarily close with. My best friend in many ways, a guiding light and mentor, a moral compass. Everything that I do, the wins, the challenges, she's always my co-pilot. And given the opportunity, she died in 2009 when we were around a kitchen table, and I wish more than anything that she would be able to walk into the office and witness what we've created on the back of what she's inspired in me, and the opportunity to have dinner with her, as cheesy as that may sound, that's the very simple, immediate response for me. But if I had to choose somebody that I wasn't related to, I would love to. I would shift it from dinner, and I would make it a brunch, because brunch you kind of catch people. They don't know how long a brunch is going to go. A dinner sort of has a set amount of hours. I would love to have brunch with Jane Goodall, because I recently watched the documentary that was all this found footage that Nat Geo did of her early work, and she just has one of the most incredible constitutions and wonderful senses of curiosity, and I admire more than anything people who are curious and creative. She's the embodiment of that, and I can make you a list of 40 people I'd love to have dinner with or breakfast with. But based on the past couple of weeks and me thinking about Jane Goodall, I'd love to sit down and just pick her brain and hear her tell stories.
Well, first off, I'm sorry for your loss of your mother. That's definitely a tough thing, and I have to be transparent. As we are recording this, my mother and my father are literally walking across the street because my mom came by the office today. So I definitely appreciate that, and I think Jane Goodall would be interesting. I now want to change this also. Is you're the first person that switched the dinner to the brunch, so kudos to you for that as well.
I'm a brunch guy. I'm not a morning person, which is why I don't say breakfast, but I do enjoy brunch.
You can't go wrong with brunch or breakfast, but that's just my opinion.
Agreed.
So I wanted to ask if there's anything exciting that you're working on that you'd like to tell our listeners about.
Oh, there's so much. We're sustained by the work that we do with all the amazing nonprofit clients we've got. We work with I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with Stand Up to Cancer. The work we do with Stand Up to Cancer, I don't know a single person who's not been unfortunately affected by the reality of cancer in some form, a relative, a friend of a friend. The work that we do with them is just extraordinary. It's the work that they do is groundbreaking. The clinical trials that they're driving. So if you ask what work is exciting, I mean, I on a daily basis, I feel in awe of being on the sidelines and being able to help coach that organization through their digital and creative strategy. But there are a lot of different nonprofit organizations we work with that I feel that way about. On the less serious side, we've got our work with YouTube we're doing. Really excited about early May, the launch of the continuation of the Karate Kid series and in this new show, Cobra Kai. We've got the new season of the AVP, which is the Beach Volleyball League, an 8-city tour coming up, 4 stops in California, and then also in Chicago and Austin and some other cities. There's just a lot of stuff. And again, honestly, I consider myself a perpetual student. The fact that I get to sit in a room with these people and talk about all these fun things all day, I sort of pinch myself. I feel very, very lucky to be working with these clients and more than that, working with the folks at Brand New who are as excited as I am to be touching this stuff.
You know, it's interesting. We've interviewed a lot of different people from all walks of life, and I think it's remarkable not only the stuff you're doing, but the excitement you show. And you said something that's interesting is you're always learning. And I think one of the things we talk about not only on our podcast, but also some of the speaking we do as a company coaching is ABL, always be learning. And I think so many people forget that learning doesn't stop after high school or college. It's just a different type of learning. So it's really neat that you're taking that, and obviously the success you've had is because you're continually learning. And as you mentioned, you're always reading articles and things, which is what you need to do, not only in your field, but to be successful in all different fields. You need to continually making sure that you're on top of the changes and what's going on.
Absolutely. Always be learning is better than always be closing. The closing will happen if you're learning.
That's true, and that's another good movie reference for Glenn Ross.
Exactly.
So I wanted to just change lanes here. What we call our hot seat questions. So if you wouldn't mind, just sharing the first answer that comes to mind.
All right. Is this censored? I'm concerned that what's the youngest audience level you've got listening to this?
Pretty young, but there's no. Don't worry. You don't need to worry about easy questions.
As long as your parents aren't back in the room yet.
No, they won't be in the room. So go ahead, feel free. So, if you had only one last meal, what would you choose for your last meal?
Oh, that's easy. It would be gnocchi alla vodka with a I don't want to say a glass of water, which is I usually drink water with my meals because it's just easier for me to eat more food than if I have soda. But gnocchi alla vodka, and then let's add in like a dirty martini.
Awesome. I would say penny alla vodka, so kudos for that.
All right.
Favorite sport?
Favorite sport? Well, I think I'm obligated as the agency of record for the AVP to say beach volleyball. If they were not paying me, I would probably say basketball. I grew up an avid Lakers fan. I don't pay as close attention as I used to with everything going on, but I'm a diehard Lakers fan, Kobe fan, Shaq fan. Even when Kobe and Shaq aren't getting along, I love them both. Definitely basketball.
So if I would ask you then your favorite team, I assume it would be the Lakers.
Yes, absolutely.
All-time favorite movie?
Casino.
Do you have a favorite book?
Phantom Tollbooth.
Favorite singer or band or group?
Oh, that's really difficult. I love Billy Joel. I love Sia. I try to balance my favor for musicians in terms of who's actually writing their own stuff. There's a lot of great pop music where they're just not writing their own stuff, and it's difficult for me to honor them in the way that I do a Billy Joel or a Sia, these amazing songwriters. But I just love music in general. The only thing that's unpalatable for me, as cliche as this sounds, is country music. I love classical, I love jazz, I love hip hop, I love electronic music when I'm trying to stay awake past the 5-hour break that I usually get. But yeah, no, Billy Joel and Sia are definitely up there. Sinatra, I love Sinatra. Anytime I drive to Vegas, I listen to nothing but Frank Sinatra on the way. That would be a good trifecta for me.
If you were in a foxhole and you could only choose one person to have your back, who would it be?
My dad.
Awesome. So before we let you go, Zach, I wanted to ask, do you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners? It is for anybody who's listening who is considering starting a business. I think the most important thing is to surround yourself with people you trust. And beyond the scope of that, the sustainability of a business hinges upon your willingness to recognize that things will go wrong and that you don't know what's around the corner, and that sometimes your toughest moments are your greatest lessons. And so you sort of have to throw logic into the wind at some point and believe that there's a greater reason for why things are happening to you. And that's coming from a spiritual place, not a religious place. I have to believe that sometimes when things that are unexplainably awful and by any measure happen, there's a greater purpose there. No, I couldn't agree more. And for our listeners that would like to connect with you or follow you or find out more about your company, what's the best way for them to do so?
Our website is brand-knew.com, brandnew.com. If we wanted to spend a couple of $1,000s, we'd buy brand new .com without the dash. But we have other things to spend the money on. And beyond that, if anybody wants to follow my infrequent posts on Instagram, it's just Suchin Sight, SUCHINSIGHT. And I think I'm the same on Twitter. I'm just Suchin. So if you want to see me complaining to airlines when I get stuck on the tarmac, follow me on Twitter as well.
All right. Well, listen, Zach, I really appreciate not only what you share with us, but taking some time out of your busy day. And don't forget, you only can get an hour and a half of sleep tonight. You got to read some of those books.
I'm on it. I will take that to heart. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to episode number 109. As the leader of a team of 35 people, Zach is always looking for different ways to improve. When he shared the one word that defines him, sleepless, I think that was a pretty good description of who he is. Zach mentioned how there is never a finish line in his business, and how he's always reading up on different trends, ideas, and ways to improve his company. Zach mentioned one thing that I really love. He said how our failures are our best professors that we have, and how it's not the wins, but instead it's the losses that make us great. Zach discussed why it is so important to be a sponge, and how ideas and energy can come from anyone and anywhere. In his parting words, he said that if he was starting a business, that we should definitely surround ourselves with the people we trust and know. He also shared how it was important to always be learning, reading, to have as much knowledge and try to get as much knowledge as you can. In closing, I would recommend that you ask yourself this one question. Do you spend more time reading, learning, and improving yourself on a daily basis? Or do you spend more time in front of your phone, in front of a TV, or wasting time on social media? I challenge you today to put down your phone, log off of Facebook, turn off your social media applications, and turn off that TV. Instead, pick up a book. Do something that will not only improve your mind, but will help educate yourself as you go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.